I'm joined by Ed Reep. He is a candidate for Hoboken City Council in the third ward in this upcoming November election. Mr. Reep, thank you for taking the time to spend a little back and forth with me on Hudson TV. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
For those who might not be that familiar with you yet at this point, in the third ward, just give me a brief rundown. What do you do professionally?
I am a data analyst. I work in Hoboken. I'm a corporate America guy. I graduated from Rutgers Business School. I've described myself in the most recent debate as a yuppie who just wanted to be left alone, but politics called him and he got involved.
Okay. All right. Let me go over a couple of issues. I was taking a look at your website, and the first thing on there talked about parking. You said that there's a. I'm sorry. I don't want to start with parking. With rent. You said there's a rent crisis in the city of Hoboken. Go over that for me a little bit. What do you consider to be the issues with regard to rent in the city?
So there are actually a number of rent related issues. The one that has been the central focus of my campaign, I would say, relates to the non rent controlled buildings in Hoboken, of which the third ward has quite a few. And the scenario is this: non rent controlled buildings, like those constructed in the past 30 years that are not, that the state of New Jersey does not allow to be under municipal rent control. A bunch of these buildings have tenants who are experiencing really, really high rent increases, like sometimes 20, 30% or something like that. And you're on top of rents that can be expensive. Like I've spoken to people who've had rents go from the 3,000 range to the 5,000 range, which can really just completely destroy a family or displace them. And the state of New Jersey, even though it creates this exemption so that a lot of these newer buildings can, be protected from municipal rent control for 30 years, there's still a provision in New Jersey state law saying that no rent increase can be unconscionable. The problem is that that's a completely undefined term. It's hard to enforce that. And so what I said in an article I wrote for the Hudson County View, and what I've been talking about a lot with my campaign, is that the city of Hoboken should do something similar to what the city of Newark did, which is to create local municipal legislation, further strengthening and emphasizing this idea of what is an unconscionable rent increase, so people don't get displaced by basically being forced out of their apartments. Newark actually originally passed an explicit 5% rent cap. I think they eventually changed that, and that would be way too extreme. But definitely, if we can do something to further limit these like crazy rent increases in the 20-30% range, that would be huge. And to my opponent's credit, in the debate, he basically adopted the same position word for word almost, and probably read my. I think he read my article. So between my opponent and I, we seem to both be aligned on this rent issue. So, and of course, there's other issues with rent control. There could be a rent control referendum coming up after this election, which could be disappointing, which could be I'm very pro rent control as well. So yeah, that's, I think, the biggest issue because it affects people's lives. And if things go wrong, they get kicked out of the city, basically.
Okay. Another issue which I mentioned briefly at the beginning is parking. What's your view on the parking situation? Is there too much development going on with not enough parking? Are there ways that we can find a solution so people don't have to drive around the block 35 times to find a parking space? Well, what's your view?
So as far as I'm concerned, we shouldn't be tormenting car owners. Cars are never going away, especially in the third ward, which is more residential. There's a lot of people who own cars, and it's not like they desperately need to own a car, or rather, it's not like they desperately want to own a car. A lot of times they have to own a car for like work or family. So, and it is what it is. And yeah, I think we should try to reclaim street parking. I think that as far as like future, I think if a new project come in, at least definitely in the third ward, but in general, I think if a new project is trying to get a variance where they don't have to, where they're supposed to include parking given existing zoning rules, and they say we don't want to have to provide parking, I think that that should just not be allowed. I think parking is important. People need places to park. I don't think we should get rid of the streeteries and parklets like in front of the restaurants, but I think we should limit them, maybe make them a little more difficult to do. I'm in public stating I'm not the biggest fan of Vision Zero. I think they've put too many obstructions for cars pulling over. I think
And that
there's
was the
creative.
next thing I wanted to bring up, the Vision
Yeah.
Zero. You say that you've got some issues with that. Elaborate for me.
Okay. So here's my issue with Vision Zero. So I'm a data analyst. I know how, like, so there's this concept of basically you could have data that is trending in a certain direction, or actually here's how I describe it. So as a data analyst, I work with data all the time, and one thing that's very important is making sure that you're not claiming claiming credit for something that was already going to happen anyway. So a big issue with Vision Zero, I have a few issues with it, but one big issue with Vision Zero is they claim that, oh, there haven't been any traffic deaths in Hoboken in the past 4 years. We implemented Vision Zero in around like the past 4 years. Therefore, all credit to Vision Zero. That's ridiculous. If you look at past data, there were years where we didn't have traffic deaths. Some of the traffic deaths were related to drunk driving. And furthermore, the problem with Vision Zero as a philosophy is that it's aiming for perfectionism. I mean, obviously, the Vision Zero people don't want to, don't think they're literally going to eliminate all traffic deaths, but its mindset, I think, doesn't take into account enough economic trade-offs and quality of life trade-offs by removing parking. I think, for example, the white bollards they put on the corners, they're great in a lot of intersections. They don't need to be in every single intersection or as many intersections as they have them now. I just think the problem with Vision Zero is it's too much feel good. It tries to claim credit for safety stuff that might have happened anyway. It doesn't care about teaching pedestrians personal responsibility. It tries to do a lot of things that don't actually make a difference, but are just like, well, we might as well do it because it's safety. But instead, if you had something that was a lot more targeted, I just don't like the whole Vision Zero mindset. I think teaching people to approach things in a perfectionist way without the trade-offs is bad. But I mean, it has done good. I think some of the stuff Vision Zero has done, like with traffic safety improvements on the road, is good. But I don't like fads. I think it's just an urban planning fad. It's a feel-good fad, and I'm in the private sector. I don't like that stuff. I want results, and I don't want to waste resources. So.
Okay, as you've gone along the campaign, knocking on doors, what other things have you been hearing from residents in the third ward that they really have an interest in and they really say need to be addressed? What are some of those other issues?
So I would say that another issue that has been a focus in the campaign has related to actually pets, and this might be a point of differentiation as well with my opponent and I. So I think that I personally do not own pets, but I am kind of I think that pet owners, or pet parents should have more of a voice on city council. I mean, they already do have a voice. I mean, you have like council people like Tiffany Fisher and such, or Jen Giatino, I think, owns a dog as well. Tiffany Fisher owns a dog. So um, I'm not saying they don't have a voice on city council, and like I said, I don't own pets, but I do have great respect and empathy for those who do. And I think, for example, like the Church Square Park dog park. I know there have been complaints about like noise coming from dogs barking there, and I know a desire. My opponent was involved in an effort to reduce the hours at that dog park earlier in the year, and that legislation failed. And I completely respect where he's coming from. I think I understand the noise complaints, and would love to partner with him and other community people on ways to alleviate those noise complaints in a way that's compassionate for everyone, but without reducing hours of the dog park. So I would say that maybe another thing that's important to me is just making sure that like those who own pets are actually, I think, a major constituency, and I think politicians need to recognize them. So I think that's important.
Okay, unfortunately, we're out of time, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to throw out your web address so people, if they want to read up on some of the things we've talked about and some of the other issues that you have concerns with, they can look at your website. So, how do they go about doing that? What is the address?
The address is Edward Reep, Hoboken, Ward 3, .wordpress.com. I'm really cheap, so .wordpress. So Edward Reep, Hoboken, Ward 3, .wordpress.com.
Okay, Mr. Reep, thank you for spending the time to talk with me on Hudson TV. Best of luck. Best of luck to you and the rest of the campaign and on election day. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Beautiful.